Hi, I'm Brian Brody. If you're like me and you have a great passion for photography and videography, you very quickly learn that there are a lot of little nuances, a lot of intricacies, especially if you one day want to be a professional photographer. You know the old saying, an hour across the table from a wise man is worth a year's study in books? Our program covers me asking Mike Morrow some questions, maybe that you've thought of, maybe some that you haven't thought of, or maybe even a little too embarrassed to ask. I'm going to ask them all. I'm going to learn from one of the best in the business. So I'm very fortunate. I get to spend a full week here in Southern Florida with world-renowned photographer and videographer Michael Morrow. These podcasts all week long from Southern Florida. You got a ton to learn, as do I, here with Michael Morrow. So Mike, when the light starts to fade like this and we're trying to get from point A to point B, that ISO has got to be all important.
When the light is changing, the ISO nowadays with these digital cameras is a huge benefit, because we can then take the ISO, start running it up, and every camera is different, so you got to know what the tolerance is, because if you go too high on your ISO, what you end up getting is a bunch of noise in your picture. So you find what that tolerance is, what your camera allows for, and then you know, obviously the lower the ISO, the less noise, the better the quality of the photo.
So Mike, when it comes to shutter speed, what's the ceiling? Like if you're confident that you can get to, say, a shutter speed of 1/1000th of a second, that's pretty much going to freeze anything, isn't it?
Shutter speed, well, like I talked about a little bit earlier, if we're shooting action, it's all about shutter speed. I never even really pay attention to my aperture, just because I want to get the fastest shutter speed possible to stop that animal. So there's a lot of ways to use shutter speed, and it's one of the most important aspects to either stop action or show motion.
All right, so Mike, we know now shutter speed is going to freeze action. We were just talking about what it would take for that to happen. Let's talk about depth of field, because here's one of the things that was the biggest stumbling block for me. It's kind of tough to have a depth of field to catch the gator's snout all the way back over his eyes. And in some of these gators, 8 to 10 feet long, it's been a real challenge for me to use the depth of field to such a degree that I get the whole gator in sharp focus.
So the biggest thing about aperture is its depth of field. And when you're shooting wildlife, you can put all the emphasis right on that subject, or you can include a lot of the information behind the shot. If I've got an animal that's pretty stationary, I'm going to really look at depth of field. I'm going to look at f-stop. If I have an animal that is moving through the environment, then shutter speed becomes the priority. Shutter speed at that point is going to be my number one concern, because I want to have a sharp image. So you want to have the fastest shutter speed that light allows to stop the action of whatever we're photographing. Depth of field, aperture, f-stops, all very important when we're shooting out here.
So Mike, then when we're talking about leave no trace, as a biologist, and I should note also that you've shot on 6 of the world's 7 continents, leave no trace is not just a good idea in terms of litter and more than just a footprint, but even when it comes to stressing out the animals that you're going to be photographing, that's a pretty big part of leave no trace as a photographer, isn't it?
Well, and for me, with having a biological background, the animals always come first. When I worked in the National Park Service, everywhere you went, you used to see this sign that says, "Take nothing but pictures, leave nothing but footprints." And that's kind of the motto that I live by. If I can walk away knowing that I have not done anything to disturb the animal, that I've not done anything to disturb the environment, job well done. I've got the image that I want. And then what I've also done is I've come back with a tool that can work for education. So, pretty good day out in the woods, huh?
Yeah, we learned a good bit. We covered, not only did we cover shutter speed, we covered ISO, and we covered a good bit about your training as a biologist and how that's led to a very ethical awareness, not just of the terrain, but the flora and fauna both, a respect for the animals that you're shooting and a respect for their habitat as well.
And for me, it's a whole new area. I've spent time all over the world, but you know what? I've never shot anything in Florida. I mean, it's like every week it's a new thing. It's a new one. What a cool world we live in. What a cool place this really is.